All right. Part 3, the part I've been excited about all of it, but really have enjoyed this. There's been like a 10-year or more span, well, about between John and I sitting down and talking. And so of course, he's been in the news and things, and I've watched things that have come up and seen how he's grown and changed. And so it was really good to hear his backstory. And I was just telling him how much I think of his integrity, that he has that warp and weft. Integrity, by the way, did you know, is a clothing and textiles term. And you would throw out the fabric and little Indians would go and look and they'd say it has integre if the warp and weft were together. And then with their slub yarns and stuff, they would say, no, you gotta get rid of this, it's no good. And I see this man as having integre. I'm sure there's issues in John's life like there is in every human, but his story so far, it really, even his pushing to stay Mormon and just up to the very end, his daughters are in leadership and he's still wanting to do it that way. I think it's been really good, really smart. A number of months ago, we did a show and I said boldly, I don't get any respect in this state, especially anymore, but I said boldly that there are 3 religious leaders in this state, true religious leaders. And I said Denver Snuffer was one. I don't agree with Denver Snuffer, and I think he's just another form of Joseph Smith's type of thing. I said John Dehlin is one. You are a religious leader. Your religion is of a different ilk, but it is a religion in a sense. And I said I am too. My form is at least I have a map that we use. We don't call it a manual, a map, which is the Bible, and we say it's up to the person to read that, hear it preached, and decide what it means to them. We don't say you must believe this. In order to be in fellowship, you have to believe how we're teaching it. You're fine. We don't care. You can come as an atheist. It doesn't matter to us. You have that right. So in our we believe that's religious leadership in respect to the rest of the evangelical churches that play the church game. They say this is what this is and this is what you must do to belong here. So that's why we think that we're somewhat of a religious leader, though much smaller than you. I wanna talk to you. This might be a little more dicey, but with all respect, someone sent to me a Facebook thing that you said, as for me and my house, we will serve tacos. Now, I was in Pennsylvania on the mission, and those Amish farmers would take great Pennsylvania Dutch on the side of their barns, that passage from Joshua, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, right? And of course, there's a play on words. What does John Dehlin mean when you put that up there under your name and the people who see you as a religious leader?
You're not going to believe me, but I will tell you the 100% truth.
Yeah.
What that means is I love
tacos.
Tacos are my favorite food.
Mine too.
Tacos are my favorite food. I love, Taqueria 27 or whatever. I love Del Taco. I went there yesterday. I love tacos.
So it really was.
Fish tacos.
Yeah.
It is that I love tacos. In that case, I'm actually, how could I not have only fond feelings for religion?
Yeah.
Given how much I, number one, loved my upbringing.
Yeah.
And then spent so many years trying to reform a church that I love so much.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned about cults.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about David Koresh and Jim Jones and Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about people who hurt other people.
Okay.
But I'm not concerned about people who are people of faith who are trying to do good in the world.
Yeah.
So I don't have, and that's why I've been willing to have Denver Snuffer people come on Mormon Stories, or South Mountain Church, or bring you on, or others, because I'm not hostile to religion or faith. I'm hostile to abuse and to manipulation and to cult-like tactics.
Okay.
So I'm anti-cult, but I'm not anti-religion.
Okay. And just for our argument's sake, not argument, but our discussion's sake, we believe religion is almost a 7-letter bad word. We just do not appreciate what religion does to people. Even the most seemingly benign religions, when they say I'm the pastor. This is my interpretation of this. You must agree with this with me. If you don't, you aren't part of us. That's tough for me. So we distinguish, just for us to understand, the difference between a relationship, we see the billboards, and a religion. So I'm going to do a word association with you and just hear from your heart what John Dehlin thinks when he hears God.
The word that came to my mind was unknowable.
Okay, I would agree. Okay. And just the word that comes to your mind is unknowable. Would you, but not not extinct or not a reality?
Unknowable. Like I want there to be a meaning and purpose to the world and to our existence. I want there to be this divine power. I want there to be a loving Father and even Mother in heaven. I want there to be an afterlife. I want there to be eternal life. Who doesn't want that? I think it's a great story.
Do you see evidence of it?
Well, I think I can see how, well, I believe that existence is miraculous.
Okay.
The fact that we exist, that language exists, that our brains exist, our eyes exist, complex civilizations, it's a freaking mind-blowing miracle. Every day, I can't believe there are advanced animals and humans on this earth flying around with wireless internet and flying jumbo planes across continents. Like, how is this not amazing? Like, I don't look at this life as bad or like the earth is coming to an end. I look at like our human existence in 2018 as miraculous. Okay. So, but I don't know what's behind it. I think, there was a little comic strip that I put up the other day. It was like,
sent to me.
Yeah, it was like, man worships stone, then man worships animal, then man worships, plethora of gods, and then man simplifies to one God, and then man worships someone who comes saying they're the son of God, and then,
And there's the whole.
Yeah, right. And like, religion is believing now what it's believing now, but if you go back 1,000 years, it was believing something different. And
Sure.
And so that's why I just say unknowable is I believe that there's something amazing going on. And so even in my darkest times as a doubter, I'm like, I can call that God. Okay. Whatever it is making all this wonderful stuff happen, I'm okay calling that God. But is it a bearded dude? Yeah. Is it a Mormon thing? Yeah. Is it a force? Is it just energy? Is it just existence? Is evolution a part of that? Like
all unknowable.
Yeah, unknowable. So I don't know. I don't know. And it's very, I'm aware enough to know that it's very convenient to like fill in those gaps with really good stories. Sure. Like, I get to resurrect with the perfect body and be with my family again and be happy and live forever. And those are great stories. And then Mormonism you could even become a god someday. And we can fill in those gaps with really and there's a lot of incentive. Well, we can be sad and depressed and miserable and lonely and feel like everything's meaningless, or we can believe that there's a God who loves us with a loving son who came to die for us and we get to go to heaven and be happy. Well, that sounds a lot better. Yeah. And I'm just aware enough to know that, we've had myths all along and that's the myth now. Okay. And maybe that's real, but maybe we created it. Okay. And ultimately, I was manipulated in an organization that used my emotions to get me to believe a narrative. Yeah. And so does that narrative give me good feelings? Yeah. But then that's the same feelings that made those dudes fly that plane into the Twin Towers and that made those people drink Jim Jones's little Kool-Aid on Guyana. Like they really believed in that narrative that they were believing in. So I guess I've been tainted enough or jaded enough or misled enough or deceived enough to where I'm just like, I'm never going to let anyone tell me kind of like how it is on the afterlife. Like, and I've said this before, if God wants to talk, I'm here. And I've prayed and I've asked and I've really been committed to this stuff. And I'm no longer going to accept the model where he talks to some other dude,
Good.
but he won't talk to me.
Good.
So in some sense, I feel like either I'm following God's will by following my conscience and my character, my integrity, or I'm just living the best life that I can. And when I die, I'll find out.
Either way,
But hopefully, I still feel like I'm moral. I still feel like I'm living in integrity. I still feel like I'm serving my fellow man.
Sure.
So like God will be a bonus if that's what it is when I die.
Not to make this a protracted thing, but the manual I read daily and study, it tells us that God reveals himself, doesn't have to be through missionaries or the Bible or even his spirit. He'll reveal himself through the cosmos. That the Aborigine can look up and say, there's something bigger than me. Boom, it's fine, it's good enough. That's what their witness is. In John Dehlin's life, do the cosmos say, there's something bigger than me? I don't know what it is. It's unknowing. He, she, it. But there's something bigger than me?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That absolutely tells me a lot about you.
Well, but what I don't like is divisive language. So like I'm torn. I don't like if I do God talk or Jesus talk, then there's a bunch of people that get alienated by that.
To.
But if I do atheist or agnostic talk, then there's a bunch of people.
Sure.
I don't think it matters.
Right.
Does it matter if you call the energy or the cosmos God?
No.
And I'm like, I don't know what to call it, but I sure love this thing and want to do good in it. And
No.
Does it matter?
No.
Does it matter if you say believer, I say agnostic?
No.
Does it matter?
No.
It doesn't matter.
But what does matter is when you put something that says to a people who read a passage that says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. When a man who, and I'm just talking from the people who talk to me about you, says, as for me and my house, we will serve tacos. And I know the background story, and I could write the same thing.
I love tacos.
I really do too.
I'm not lying. I love tacos.
Right. So we agree on that. But coming from you,
Yeah.
people would say, he's just an atheist.
No, I've literally never referred to myself as an atheist or an agnostic. Ever.
You did get to the brink of agnosticism and atheism.
Yeah.
But you've never referred to yourself.
I don't like the terms.
Because they're divisive?
They're unnecessarily divisive, and they don't. I mean, I believe everyone's agnostic. I think even religion would say people walk by faith.
Yeah.
So faith means you don't know.
Absolutely.
So we're all agnostic, and so what does that term even mean? An atheist is like a negative identity, denying something that you can't ever prove a negative.
Right.
So why would I want to define myself with a negative identity?
Right.
I'm someone who doesn't believe something.
Right.
That's dumb.
Yeah,
it's
it
like,
is dumb.
what are you for? What do you believe? Yeah. Well, I'm for love. I'm for truth. I'm for service. I'm for kindness. But I'm not anti anything. So anyway, I did not think anything sacrilegious when I put that banner on Facebook. Because I respect people of faith.
Yeah. And like it's said by some, when someone says, not you, but when someone says I'm an atheist, what they might be saying is, I don't agree with the God that you're describing to me. So it may not have anything to do with them saying there is no. It might just be, with everything you presented me, I am out of this. And I can respect it. I really can.
And you know what? There are so many post-Mormons that leave religion and are disenchanted, but then they feel like they need something more.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to show that leaving Mormonism isn't necessarily the end of one's journey or even spiritual journey. And there are, you find post-Mormons who believe in, foot zoning and seances and all sorts of stuff where you're like, whoa, I thought you were a skeptic. I thought you were science-based. And people we have in us a need for something bigger and something more. Yeah. And so, I love people being on a quest to find something more. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Just when you said in our earlier interview together, you said how it was so daunting. You felt like the Superman figure going up with the weight of the world with the emails you were getting. I just have to share a similar story. On our Heart of the Matter, we, of course, are trying to preach the real Jesus, not religion, to people, the Mormons specifically, who have scorched earth, who have been burned. And we want to let them know it doesn't have to be that way. But I went to an event of yours And I had a number of people who came up, Shawn, how you doing? I said, good, how you doing? They said, great. They said, I loved your show. Your show helped so much. Great, what's up? I'm an atheist now. So I bear that thing too. I mean, it is really tough. You don't know what to do. You feel like you're ruining people's lives. You're uprooting their marriages. You get the emails. It is really tough. Yeah. So I understand what you were saying. I didn't want to say it while you were talking about it. Saved. The word saved. Thoughts?
Oh, wow. You know, I never understood that term growing up. In Baptist Katy, Texas, I'm like, wait a minute. So I can just like have this experience, say I'm saved, and then screw anyone and drink and do drugs and whatever, and it doesn't matter, because like that just never made sense for me. Now, of course, I was raised in a church where works was also very much emphasized.
Sure.
So saved is the word, right?
Yeah, saved.
The way that I would like embrace that term is that all are unconditionally loved. That we are irredeemably loved in the universe, you know?
Here and there.
Yeah, just we
on
are
earth and afterlife, unconditionally loved.
Just worthy.
All.
Yeah, everyone's worthy.
Okay, so I just want to get up because I agree with you. You might not know that, but I agree. I think when Jesus, you might agree with that, but I agree when he saved the world, not just those who believed on him. He reconciled the world to God. So that's my religious thing. But would you agree that a lying false prophet in the Mormon church, Joseph Smith, is loved and unconditionally brought back to God after this life, if there is an afterlife?
I mean, okay, if there's an afterlife, I can't believe in a sad heaven, and I can't believe
in a burning hell.
Yeah, or in a God that that doesn't want everyone. You know, I would ask these questions as a Mormon back when I really was caring about doctrine, like eternally I'm going to be in the celestial kingdom, like forever and ever and ever in outer darkness, and God's okay with this. And then you would get, well, maybe there's progression between kingdoms. And then I'm like, okay, well, if that's true, then what does the judgment mean? And why have 3 levels of heaven? If there's, okay, I'll wait a millennia or 12, and then, okay, I'm moving levels. Like, so yeah, for me, the only type of God I'm willing to believe in is an unconditionally loving, kind God who wants everybody back at the table.
Not only wants, but will have them back at the table?
Yeah. And will never stop having his children, do everything they could to return to him. Right?
Absolutely. Otherwise, he's a failure. Otherwise, Jesus
and a jerk.
A jerk, sure.
Can I say asshole?
Sure. You can say anything you want. If you heard some of the shows, you sure can.
Yeah. If there's a God, he and she, it is unconditionally loving.
Okay.
And never gives up.
Never gives up.
Yeah.
A follow through to that. Would you? You don't care about afterlife. Do you not believe in it? You're not
I want there to be an afterlife.
You do want one.
Yeah, I love life.
Yeah.
So why? I don't want it to end.
Well, these things are important to hear from you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you've said them along the way, but people can't watch 900. So yeah. So
no, I want there to be an afterlife for sure. I don't want this life to end.
Okay. Anyone? So I'm just going back to it. Idi Amin, Pol Pot. Nobody is going to. Pol Pot's going to be as good as John. I mean, Brother Pol Pot and Idi Amin and Hitler and everybody else. Hey, God is love. So what about justice then? What are your ideas on justice? Do you have any? When human beings decide to tap into that dark spot that was in your heart, and instead of just pursuing it through Mormon Stories, go down and shoot up a stake center. I mean, do you see any reason for justice?
So, one of the real benefits of my faith crisis, prior to like 2011, I don't think of myself as ever having made a big mistake. Like I was Nephi, in my mind, I was Nephi for 38, 39, 40 years. then when everything fell apart, I made a big mistake and really hurt, my wife and kids. And it was awful, and it's the one big regret of my life. And it was really important for my growth as a person, because I did something that I never thought I could ever possibly do.
Wow.
That, because, my parents have been divorced, and so, like, when you do something that you would have loathed just a year prior, I'll never do that, people like that are bad, and then you do it, it really changes you, and you just realize, wow, like, it gives you humility. That pride that you referred to in the early parts of my interview, that jerky exceptionalism, having the benefit of making a huge mistake humbles you and makes you see everyone differently. Yeah. And you think, well, if I can make a huge mistake when I knew better and I'm a good person, then what is it that we don't get about other people's behavior? Like, and all the cliches about don't judge someone till you walk in their moccasins, or everyone's fighting a battle, you just don't know what it is. There are all these quotes. And so if you take that we're all capable of making mistakes, and then you add to it the study, the Milgram study on obedience to authority. Sure. Do you know about that study?
Sure. Yeah, it's amazing.
Where they get people to believe that they're electrocuting people across the wall, and they're screaming and writhing in pain on the other side of the wall, and it's like, oh, what should I do? The experiment must continue. What? I need to continue. And you realize, oh my gosh, people will do terrible things under the spell of authority. It's almost like this ape brain that lives in these little clans of apes with the alpha male persists into human existence, and we are capable of doing horrible things purely if we're in a system that's ruled by authority. And it's not, if you study the Milgram experiment and Nazi Germany, it wasn't like every SS agent or whatever was an evil person. Right. These were Christian people who cared about their family and loved their kids. They just had a leader that was despotic,
Yeah, I do know.
And then you add the reality of mental illness. Yeah. Like, there are people who don't have a conscience, that you and I feel guilt or sorrow or sadness, and that just like some people can't see, some people can't hear, some people don't feel remorse.
Right.
And we would like to think that we know what it's like to never feel remorse, but we don't, because we feel it all the time. We feel it deep. So what would it be like to have that part of your brain broken? Could a human do horrific things if their brain, someone's diabetic, someone's got heart disease, somebody, has cancer, somebody has no conscience. And I'm not justifying behavior, but I'm just saying, once you can look at humans from a 360 dimensional perspective, it kind of explains almost everything, really. And then you just realize that everybody gets their genetics, they get their upbringing, they get the context in which they were raised, the situations they've been dealt with, and then they get their current situation. And pretty much all of us, if I were you, I would pretty much act like you. Yeah. And if you were me, you'd act like me. And if we had been raised with Hitler's DNA and Hitler's upbringing and Hitler's social conditioning and the period of Nazi Germany and whatever his conscience lacked, can we really say we would act differently?
It's a phenomenal response. Because it sounds like through your experience with your being humbled by life, that you become more merciful. That you sound like you carry with you a great deal of mercy, which is something the God I believe in loves mercy. In fact, James says mercy triumphs over justice. I remember as a Mormon, they said, no, they can't rob each other. No, it robs, mercy
It has
robs.
to. It has to. It has
Phenomenal.
To. I'm more of a mercy guy for sure. I believe it. I don't know how you'll like this. Maybe you said this, I don't know. I don't like the word sin,
That was the next on the list.
I like learning. It's not sinning, it's learning.
Okay.
That's, for me, that's a much more positive framing.
Okay.
Now, yes, you can do bad things. You can violate, in your words, God's law. You can break God's law and do bad things and hurt people.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm a sinner. For some that might be useful. For me, that's discouraging. It's demotivating. For me, what I want to do is say, okay, I screwed up. I'm not going to beat myself up about it too long. I will for a bit,
Sure.
but then I'm going to dust myself up, stand up, learn from my mistakes, and then do better.
Why do you beat yourself up for a bit?
You know, you just have this idea that if you suffer a little bit, you'll learn the
So
lesson.
it's self-atoning, you
You
think?
kind of learn the lesson a little bit.
Learn it better. Okay.
I think so. And usually life gives you the consequence. You don't need to punish yourself.
So this, and I'm with you. I'm really with you, John, and I say that with all my honesty. Having said these things, how practical is it in your life? For instance, when you drive out right now and someone cuts you off, and they brake on you and flip you off, and then they come and cuss your wife out. Are you able to still maintain that view? Have you got to that place where you're able to say, look, the guy's defective, he's had a bad childhood, he's choosing badly today, he'll feel remorse later, and this will be a learning experience for him?
I went through that period in 2011-12 where I was questioning everything, and I was in a really dark place. And then I made a huge mistake, and it was in that moment where I realized that I didn't have to throw away all the good that I had been taught, that there was a lot of really good things that I had learned as a Christian, as a Mormon.
Sure.
And the difference was I let it all fall to the ground, and then I picked up everything that I wanted to keep. And by having that ability to let it all go and then pick it up myself, it was mine for the first time. And ironically, I'll tell you something really ironic. You know how the Bible talks about a lustful heart or whatever, right? I was always girl crazy, and I never had premarital sex, and I obeyed the law of chastity with like one super teeny minor slip up, obeyed the law of chastity, but I always was like, I was always noticing cute women. I was always like, what would it be like to be with her? Oh my gosh, well, I'm married, but like, let me develop these other relationships so that like, if anything ever happened, and I was always kind of pushing that envelope of like getting to know someone and not crossing, inappropriate sexual boundaries, but like getting emotionally, as close to someone as I could, because I was always like longing for more, right?
Sure.
Female intimacy.
Sure.
And yeah, what was super weird was once once it all fell to the ground and I realized how much is at stake, what happens when you hurt the person you love most, what that does to your kids when they look at you and they see that. And then I said, you know what? I want fidelity, I want monogamy, but I'm choosing it. I'm choosing it not because and this is for me, I'm not choosing it because I'm worried about this God up there that's going to judge me, and in the books and the angels and like the scale. It's like there may be nothing there. It may be just me, but I'm choosing it for me. All that like lustful went away.
Wow. Yeah, of course.
And I've had like you could give me several decades of kind of a wandering eye lustfulness, and like from that moment in 2012 to today, I don't have that kind of lustful wandering heart anymore. And it's just weird that it took me losing those defective religious misconceptions that I was raised with in Mormonism to kind of turn my heart towards actual inherent goodness.
Dude, you're preaching the core of the Christian faith. That it is you don't like the word sinfulness, it's our fallenness, it's our humbling experiences that cause us to be liberated from things. It's by the weak things of the world that victory is had, not through the strength of your ego, where before you were strong, but your eye was looking. Now, when you were finally broken, so to speak, or humbled, you were able to be free of it.
Yeah, the broken heart and contrite spirit. I believe that worked for me when Mormonism fell apart, which was ironic, right?
It is ironic.
But I feel like I'm more honest than ever. I'm more service-oriented than ever. All the Christian virtues, I would think I'm a better father now. I'm a better husband now.
You're a better Christian now, John. That's what Christianity is. That's what it is.
Okay, when it's time, I want to talk to you about that.
We'll talk about that then.
Yeah, about the word Christian.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that gladly. I got to bring this up because you're known. You're wearing a rainbow thing. I'm assuming that's LGBTQ. What is the Q? Queer. Broken heart, contrite spirit. This is a little tough. No problem. Someone wants to be LGBTQ, welcome here, whatever, no problem. That's your life, do it. I'm driving down 4th South several years ago on a Sunday to go teach, and 5 men stepped into this crosswalk, and 2 or 3 of them turned to me, and they did several sexually aggressive homosexual things. It was the Pride Parade. And so I'm watching this and I'm thinking, they don't know if I have my children in the car or not. And they're doing things to themselves while they look at me and stuff. I see a huge difference between being gay, being lesbian, being transgender, being queer, and losing the broken heart and contrite spirit. I see that if we were in Vegas, if you were driving through Vegas and a female prostitute entered the crosswalk and started doing things in front of you with your kids scene, that is taking her own thing between her and God, and she's promoting it publicly in a way that throws away contrite spirit and broken heart. It says, I'm proud. The reason those men were there was because it was the Pride Parade. I didn't know it. I'm not making this up. It affected me greatly. Do you see a difference in your support of the LGBTQ and the opposition that comes sometimes with the pride that's exhibited through that? I don't have to be proud that I can bang chicks. You know, I don't care that you like men or women, but why does that have to come with it? And do you support that end of the, hey, it's so, I celebrate in your outlandish sexuality, good for you. That's what I'm curious to know about you. Whatever your answer is, fine with me. That's your choice. But I'm curious about that side.
Well, that's like a 10-hour conversation.
Is it?
Yeah, there's so much there. Like, okay, there's just a very basic level where there are people in the world that aren't respectful or that aren't whole or that aren't, in a good place or that are ill-mannered.
Okay.
That's just the human experience.
Okay.
So just like I wouldn't say all heterosexuals are like, a prostitute that is acting in a vulgar, inappropriate way, I wouldn't say that all LGBT people are like those dudes at the crosswalk. So that's kind of the first pass over that problem is you don't. The second pass over that problem is, for me, when let's talk about the gay pride parades for a second. When you've been a marginalized, group that's been punished and stigmatized for so long, Carolyn Pearson, I grew up in the AIDS crisis, right? Magic Johnson was one of my heroes along with Larry Bird, and then he gets AIDS and you learned about, and you see all these people, LGBT people dying of AIDS. Obviously in growing up Mormon, it's like, oh, well, that's sin and blah, blah, blah. But, I once interviewed Carolyn Pearson for Mormon Stories, and she gave me this wonderful quote. We throw them in the gutter and then we expect them not to get dirty. If you read this really important research called the Family Acceptance Project, what you find out is that LGBTQ youth who are highly rejected by their family of origin are 3 times more likely to engage in risky sexual behavior. They're 3 times more likely to engage in risky drug use, and they're 8 times more likely to attempt suicide. And you realize that there's dysfunction everywhere, and some of the dysfunction in the LGBT community, if there's dysfunction, comes from these people who are literally thrown in the gutter by their own mother and father, by their own religious faith community, which didn't say, come here, we love you, we accept you. They said, you're dirty, you're broken, you're gross and vile, and you're one of the signs of evil in the existence. And when you're rejected by your family, by your friends, by your faith community, that's gonna cause you to act in ways that aren't healthy.
I understand that.
So that's another level. There's another level, just a pride parade. Some of that isn't so much like I can bang dudes.
Yeah.
Some of that is just like, we're sick of being viewed as dirty and secret and as bad. So we are, and even the term queer used to be a slur. And they said, we're sick of people slurring us. We're going to take that term back and use it in pride. So even the term queer, when someone identifies as queer, they're basically saying, you can call me dirty and bad, but I'm going to own my awesomeness. And so I'm not going to say that I love it when anybody in public is acting in a distasteful way. And that can be heterosexuals or straight people.
Right.
But I get some of that pride is just, and I've marched in the Pride Parade 4 or 5 years in a row. I have members of my family who are in the LGBT community, and a lot of that is just saying we're not going to be beat down and marginalized and denigrated anymore. We're going to be proud for who we are. Now, if I go to a whole nother level, I got my PhD in, my dissertation was on the LGBT Mormon experience. What I know with very high levels of certainty is that and you may not agree with this, and this is totally fine. This is just my reading of the data. Most people don't choose to be LGBT.
No problem.
Science has pretty much demonstrated that it's heavily influenced by the gestational period in the womb and the hormones and the chemicals that influence your brain. It's a biological phenomenon where, let's just say 80 to 90% of those who end up identifying as LGBT, that was determined from before they came out.
Yeah, no problem with that. Yeah.
And so if it's not a choice, and if that's how they're wired, you could even argue that's how God makes them.
Sure.
Then the question is, do they deserve love? Do they deserve intimacy? Do they deserve companionship? I know I don't want to be without intimacy.
They do.
Or
They do
companionship.
deserve love. They do deserve intimacy. No problem.
And so I want them to have that.
Right.
And so I don't want to impose my religious views or secular views and limit whatever love and joy and peace they could have.
I only brought that situation up with that story to show our audience and those who are critical, to say, just to draw the line that you understand why there might be acting out. You understand why the parade, because they've been they've been thrown in the gutter and all those things. But sometimes from the more conservative side, the view is you just want the whole world to be rainbow, and you're just you're just for anything they do. And I don't mean to speak of it. I'm just trying to talk in terms of how they would say it. And I don't think that's your objective. I think your objective is equality, fairness, love, acceptance, healing for everybody, hetero, homo, whatever. Yeah.
And I don't think you can make someone gay just like you can't make someone heterosexual. Yeah. We studied over 1,000 Mormons who tried to change their sexual orientation for religious motivations, found that attempting to use God and Jesus to change your sexual orientation was actually the most dangerous form of attempting to change, and it led to suicidality. God and Jesus don't make people straight, and there's a whole cottage industry based on fraud, in my view, of charlatans who try and sell healing in the name of Christ to gay people, and it's caused generations of deep damage. And so I'll just say this, I don't think alcohol is wrong. I don't think, responsible marijuana use is wrong. I'm not even going to categorically say that open marriages or, responsible sexuality in a non-monogamous state. I'm not even going to go far as to say that's wrong, but I will say that I haven't tried beer. I've tried to be sexually responsible, and I tend to think monogamy is kind of, I don't want to say it's the best, but like I'm still a big fan of monogamy. And I'm also like not judgy of those who aren't.
Right.
But what I want for a gay couple personally is just a committed, loving, monogamous, maybe they don't want that for themselves or straight people, whatever. Again, I want to leave room for people that aren't monogamous and not judge them and say it's bad. I don't think it's bad. But for me, I'm still very much a monogamy guy.
Sure.
I'm still very much a one spouse, one sexual partner. I mean, that's just what I think.
Sure.
That's just what I'm most comfortable with.
Okay.
So I'm very conservative in that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Knowing the Christian story that we believe Adam and Eve. And so you don't like the word sin, and I don't like it either. I've made mistakes with that word. But I do like the word lesser. And I don't mean lesser in terms of equality or human value. I mean lesser in terms of the optimum. If Adam and Eve were the optimum for the human race, and without heterosexuality, we wouldn't have a human race, the way I see it. If we're going to go with the Christian story, and I'm talking from my perspective, then if someone operates outside of that, I realize they're operating outside of that in all probability because they came into the world that way. I believe that they're operating outside of that because that's who they are. And I believe that God loved the world so much he sent his son to die and save them in their way, in my way, in your way. He saved all of us in our way. We didn't repent first. We didn't come holy first. He saved us as we are. I think it helps people. You like to help people. I think it helps people to say that I don't think my status is optimum. I think that it is lesser than what maybe should or could have been but can't be. Because it keeps that humility and that broken heart and that contrite spirit within us. And it doesn't mean you can't be gay. We have gay couples who support the ministry and they know this view and they themselves have told me, I wouldn't choose this, but this is what I am. And we say, as you are, you're welcome. But if it becomes this is the way, it seems to me like there is more harm being done to their psyche than if they could see it in what I just described. What do you think on that?
What I hear you saying is that we all need to be humble.
Yes.
And we never arrive. We never, in this life, we never arrive. We never reach that point. And we're going to be open to growth and progress if we're humble and not prideful.
Yes.
And so in that sense, and honestly, and I'm not trying to secularize your comment, I love that about science.
Yeah.
The scientific method would say you never arrive.
Yeah.
You don't just like, this is now truth.
Right.
This needs to be tested, retested. If there's new information, it can override and trump I find a lot of humility in the scientific method, even though there are people who love empiricism and science that club everyone over the head with it.
Yeah.
I find science to be inherently humble in that sense.
Yeah.
And I guess I love that about what I'm hearing you put down, which is, let's none of us think that we're perfect or arrived, because then we won't learn and we won't grow.
Right.
Why learn and grow if you're already there?
That was the problem with Mormonism. We knew it.
I hated that. I hated that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I don't like to frame it in terms of fallenness or inferiority, but I'm just like, let's keep growing. Growth mindset.
Growth mindset, okay. By the way, you spoke of emotionalism, how it preys upon people. Well, I am really anti-emotional in every way. We have such dead services here. Not many people come because they want the rock and it does prey upon people. And we'll talk about that maybe someday when we talk about other churches and how they pray.
No, I want to have that conversation.
Yeah. Really quick, the personal, I think you've told us, so just reiterate why you do what you do now. It is so that we can get it again clearly. John Dehlin does this because.
So my work with Mormon Stories podcast and the Open Stories Foundation, our mission statement is to provide information, resources, and community for people experiencing or impacted by a religious transition. Okay. So we find that a religious transition, especially away from a fundamentalist religion, can be so traumatic that people need support. So that's kind of our mission statement. A lot of people think I'm anti either religion or anti-Mormonism. And I do not think of myself this way. This is what I would do. If I had a magic wand today, I would wave it, and what I would wish for was that every Mormon and every Christian and every religious person and every person in the world could see reality as closely as possible. So with Mormonism, that would mean you know what Joseph Smith did, you know what the Book of Mormon is and isn't, you know what the Book of Abraham is and isn't, you know the harm the church does to women and minorities and people of color and LGBT people and society, and you know the good, you know all of it, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a Christian, like I had Bart Ehrman on,
you know all
Mormon
of it.
Stories, you know that the Bible, Matthew didn't necessarily write Matthew, and Luke didn't necessarily write Luke, and it was handed down, and that there are, and for my view, there might be problems or contradictions, and there are other faiths and there are other traditions, and everyone would see the world clearly, and then be able to make an informed decision based on not only the evidence but also a weighing of the harm and benefit. And if everybody could just have that full information and make an informed decision that came from their heart, that wasn't coerced, that wasn't manipulative, then I don't care if you're Christian, if you're atheist, if you're Mormon, I don't care, because at that point, you have full information, full disclosure, and you're making a decision from your own heart, not from because your dad won't give you a truck when you serve your mission, or your wife will leave you, or you'll be ostracized, or you're fearing that God's going to punish you. You're doing things because they're centered in who you are with all the information. That's all I want.
We're on the same path. I want information, and you do not hold back on, and that's what I've experienced in the Christian world. I stepped out of Mormonism, thought the evangelical thing was it, and then I realized the Christian thing has as many warts and delusions as the Mormon thing, except the Mormons do it better. So I agree with you. So you're an educator. You want to inform.
Yeah, totally. I want people to make informed choices.
I have gained, we're out of time, I've gained such renewed respect for you. I really have. And
I want to have you on Mormon Stories.
Have you on again. We'll do part 2.
Yeah, so we've been doing updates.
Oh.
We did Michael Coe, we brought him back. We've been bringing back people that were kind of early classics.
Wow.
So I want to freaking interview you, Shawn McCraney.
Let's do it.
And I want to talk about what your journey's been like since then.
Oh my gosh, bring that beer you haven't drank.
Yeah, and we just interviewed South Mountain, and we've been exploring spiritual paths after Mormonism.
Yeah.
And I know you've got thoughts on better and maybe suboptimal and better paths.
Yes.
And I'm open to having that conversation.
I would love, when you have the time, I'm honored, really appreciate it. Final words for our audience. We have a lot of seekers around the world, and we have people who were, many people who are still or were LDS. You ended our show, I think. Give me your pitch. That's what you said. Give me your pitch.
I hate that question.
That's what you said. That's what you said to me. Give me the pitch. So I won't use it on you. But what would you say? All that you've seen, John. I mean, all the pain and everything you've gone through. What would you say to a general audience? Not even to the Mormon, just the general audience.
I'd say, above all, be kind. Kindness trumps everything. I think Jesus would support that.
I do too.
So kindness trumps everything. I would say, don't hold back living your truest, authentic life out of fear. It was scary to, in my case, it was scary to question. It was scary to speak out. It was even scary to be, excommunicated. I didn't want to be kicked out of the church and shamed in that way. I was terrified that I couldn't raise good, healthy kids without the church. I was terrified that I couldn't be a moral, honest person, even though I was less honest as a Mormon than I am now. I feel like I was terrified that I couldn't be a decent human without being Mormon. And I'm not even saying leave Mormonism, but I am saying that when Christ talks about being saved, when Buddhism talks about enlightenment, there's sort of this, level of teachings that we all get as a child from our parents, from our culture. And at some point, what I consider being rebirth, born again, is allowing all of that to fall to the ground and really going inside. And instead of outsourcing your morality, outsourcing your authority, you go inside. And I think Jesus said the kingdom of God is within.
Yes, he did.
Right? And what I think prayer is about is having you do that introspection and even connecting with, because I think of Mormon Stories as being an inspired act. Like I was on a walk and I felt this thing, this energy that's saying, do this. And I'm like, it wasn't a voice, and I don't know if it came from a supreme being, but it felt like something was pushing me on to do this. And so it's a combination of knowing yourself really well and then tuning in around you to what's needed for you in your own growth, for your family, for your community, for the world. And if you can put that fear away, get tuned into who you are, what you care about, and then pay attention to what's around you and to the motivation that can come. My testimony is that whether it's God or energy or the universe or whatever, forces will rise up to support your righteous endeavors. And the more that you put your shoulder to the wheel, the more that you spend your life in the service of others, alleviating suffering, promoting information and joy and wellness. It'll be scary, but you will be supported. You'll be supported by motivation. You'll be supported by surrounding influences. People will step up to support you that you wouldn't have ever guessed, and you will be supported and empowered for as many steps into the darkness as you're willing to take, or into the light. And so don't let fear ruin your life. Don't outsource your authority and your power. Plug into the power that's available to you, and you'll never regret it. I don't regret giving up $200,000 a year. I don't regret being publicly shamed and kicked out of a church. It's all been incredibly positive in the end. It's been painful. There's been adversity. There's been people trying to just, hurt me and others, and there have been critics, but I could die today and feel like I made a contribution, and there's nothing better than that. And I think I think you probably could have made a little more money doing something else.
I think so.
I think you could have, I think you could have, had a lot more fun or a lot more ease. But I guess one of the things I appreciate about you is I feel like we're both kind of in the trenches a bit, doing a little bit of the dirty work, trying to see what good we can do. And there are lots of people doing it. I don't think we're anything special, but I do feel a solidarity with you, even though we may be coming at it from a different
But I agree with
angle.
I agree with everything you said.
I don't think there's much of a difference between us. Just maybe we use a little bit different adjectives to describe what we're doing.
I think so too, my friend.
Yeah. So Shawn McCraney.
John Dehlin, Mormon Stories.
The website's mormonstories.org if anybody wants to check it out.
mormonstories.org, and we'll see you next week here on Heart of the Matter.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.